This video is brought to you by Patreon provider Scott. Well, here we are again, this time looking through the Nikon P-Tactical 223. This being a fixed parallax scope set at, I believe, 100 yards. Anything inside of that is going to look like this. Kind of meh. Now, the 3x9 magnification range, I'll admit it right now, is not my favorite, but I'll touch on that more a bit later. Stretching this out to something beyond 100 yards, however, is going to yield a pretty sharp image, especially at the center. Notice the dark ring that forms around the outside of the field of view. I believe that's a limitation primarily because of the 1-inch main body tube. However, that was filmed on a pretty overcast day. What about on a beautiful, bright, sunny day such as this? Now we're looking at about a 400-yard steel door, and again you'll notice the ring comes up. And this time I think a little bit more apparently. I think it has something to do with the even brighter levels of light that's coming through it. However, if you're looking at the crosshair and the drops, it's very, very sharp, but around the outer edge at 9x, it does fall apart. Still, I think it's very usable. And notice that you have a little bit of purple fringing around the high contrast areas around the windows to the outside of the stucco wall. And here's a great example of just how sharp the center is opposed to the outside at 9x. However, if we back out the magnification just a little bit, it completely goes away. That was about 6x, there's your 9, we back it out to about 8, 7 or so, and it looks really good edge to edge. Now, at 9x it might be a little off, but at any other magnification in between that, it looks really, really good. This is at 3x, and edge to edge looks fantastic. And again, that center looks great. As I said before, this is a fixed parallax scope, which means that it's set to about 100 and beyond. Anything inside of that, such as this here at 50 yards, is not going to be ideal. So if you're thinking about using this inside of 100 yards, expect to have blurry images. However, when having parallax issues, blurry images is not your only concern or even your main concern. Your main concern is having everything line up when you're behind the gun so that you're on target. If you've ever wondered why your crosshair will move across the image when you're sitting behind the rifle, it's because your parallax is not adjusted properly. And what that'll do is, naturally, throw your shot. It becomes even more crucial to have a very solid cheek weld. However, it still looks pretty damn good at 50 yards, despite the fact the parallax is not perfect. Now here's a pretty good party trick about this scope, the eye box. At 3x, it's actually fairly open and pretty forgiving, a lot more so than on some budget, lower-end LPVOs, for example. And what that's going to do is help you get behind the rifle a lot quicker and get on target a lot faster as well. You can honestly never have too large or too forgiving of an eye box, especially on something that starts with such a high magnification of 3x. Bumping up the magnification up to 6x, and you'll see that the eye box is still pretty good. However, if you take note of the crosshair, you will note that it starts to wiggle around ever so slightly. That is due to the fact that we are inside the scope's fixed parallax setting of 100 yards. Bumping the magnification to its maximum of 9x, and you'll see that the eye box does in fact get tight. But it's still not terrible. It's not as bad as the Leopold VXR, where it actually shifts the eye box forward or back. It's not terrible, especially considering this is a $180 scope. Now, despite the fact that this scope has the word tactical in its name, I think people are going to use it for hunting. So here we are in the woods. We start looking at that derelict building at about 70 yards, and it holds up fairly well. The crosshair even gets picked up fairly well, despite the fact that this is a dimly lit area. Speaking of the reticle, now's the perfect time to say that I actually really like it. I like the fact that it has rings on the drops instead of dots or even hash marks. It's very easy to set it up on a target and know that you could at least figure out exactly that you're on the target and not next to it or around it. Despite the fact that I think 3x is a little bit too much magnification to be using at very close ranges, it's not going to stop people from not only doing it, but also loving it. And here we're going to do a quick scan of the woods, just so you can get a good feel for how it would look when you're actually using it in such an environment. No magnified scope review would be complete without showing you how well the scope in fact tracks. Now, despite the fact that this has a BDC reticle, it also has quick adjust, non-locking target turrets. This is a fad that a lot of scope manufacturers do, and I'm sure some people like it, but for me I just don't see the point. subjective opinion aside, objectively, these turrets are great. They not only track well, as you can see, but they also feel really good, and sound really good as well. They give a very tactile click through the turret when you are adjusting them, and they're generally just really, really nice. Honestly, very impressive for the price at $180. And that's going to very neatly bring us into the closing statements about how I feel about this $180 3x9.
Good. Very good. Excellent, in fact.
So, with all that being said, this Nikon P Tactical 223 with BDC600 reticle for $180 comes in at a phenomenal price point, and it offers a lot of really good features. It's got really good glass. Magnification range is a completely subjective taste. Me personally, I don't care too much for the 3x9, but in this package it works extremely well. 3 is very clear, 9 is very clear on the center with a little bit of distortion at the edges, but everything else is great. The turrets, despite the fact that I don't understand why they would put target turrets with a BDC, that is just my subjective feeling. Objectively, they're fantastic. As you saw in the video, both elevation and windage turrets track fantastically well. Now, they might not be locking, but they do have a real nice toolless adjustment feature. You just pull up, you can adjust your zero however you need, and you know what? It lines up really, really well. Nikon impressed me with this one. The scope shadow is really not obtrusive at all. In fact, it's very, very minimal. It's got a really nice simple reticle. It's got very good turrets, and it seems well built. As far as longevity goes, I can't really say much about it, but I can say that this is a really nice optic. If you're on the fence about grabbing one of these, I would say just get it. It's $180, and if it fits everything that you're looking for, I would say it's excellent. So how does this factor in as far as weight? 16 3/4 ounces is actually fairly light. That 4 to 12 VXR that I reviewed, I believe was 15.1, 15.2. So just shy of 2 ounces heavier than that. Still makes this thing pretty light. And you know what? It doesn't feel heavy at all. And it's got a pretty good balance to it. A very huge thank you to Patreon provider Scott for sending this in for review. I am still chugging away with all the stuff that he sent in months ago. So thank you for your patience. I know I appreciate it. I hope all of you do too. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time. And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you, this wouldn't be possible.